What's something horrible you've witnessed as a child but did not completely understand, only to discover later in life how horrible it really was? Walking 20 minutes to school only to pass the liquor store parking lot where you see your dad passed out in the parking lot. Helped and watched my best friend's dad pack out the house. I was maybe 6 or 7 at the time and had no idea he was ditching wife, kids, job, or any other adult responsibility. He made the task into a game for me and his son. We were taking things to go camping. After we packed up, he told us boys to head back to town, where there was a local parade going on, and not tell the wife mom because it was a surprise. As young as I was, I had no idea of the magnitude of what he was doing. Apparently he cleaned out their bank accounts, money, and valuables. We were just excited to go camping. An hour later, my buddy's life was in ruins and they had to leave the house they were renting and move away. To this day, I have no idea what happened to my childhood friend, his mom, or the dad. It was a pretty despicable thing that guy did. Was the parade real, at least? Something was always off about step-uncle Caesar. I saw him grope my older cousins as they ran away at family gatherings. He died after falling down the stairs, drunk. We found out after his death that he was facing criminal charges for injuries caused by his DUI accident back then. They didn't jail people for that. I thought that was bad. But here it is some 20 years later and my aunt died. I learned at her funeral that Uncle Caesar was molesting his stepson, my cousin, during those childhood years. Trouble is, we all complained about Uncle Caesar. No clue why nothing was done about him. Literally no one went to his funeral. At summer camp when I was 8 years old, I remember seeing a camp counselor in his mid-30s stripped down to the nude in the main bunk room surrounded by kids to change into his pajamas. What's even more messed up is he had a huge erection while doing it. I only realized how messed up it was years later. I saw a man put something in a woman's drink at a restaurant. She had gone to the bathroom and he put some powder in her drink. Back then, I didn't know what roofies were, so I thought maybe it was just medicine or something. It sickens me when I think about it now. I don't know if this counts, but my cousin and I were the dumbest fucking children when we were younger. We had a game we played when no one was around. It doesn't have a name and it could have gotten us killed on a couple of occasions. Basically, we would get lollipops and push them down each other's throat. Like actually hold the lollipop stuck and slowly slide the candy down. When I got anatomy in school, it dawned on me how absolutely idiotic we acted as children. I hope the dumb fuck DNA doesn't run in family. When I was 11, my mom and I left my dad and were homeless. I did not realize we were homeless till I was 20. I just thought we were on some kinda excursion. We were just kinda sleeping in the car and at friends' houses for a while. I just had so much trust for my mother, I was never once startled by the situation. My mother is also very creative. Wow, I found these flavored tuna pouches. Wouldn't it be cool if we acted like cats? I bet you can't brush your teeth with only a water bottle. And other classics like I'm gonna leave you at the library for a while. About 2 years later we did find a house. We were too poor to afford a sitter, so mom would always take me out on dates with her. On one of her first dates, the guy took us to Chuck E. Cheese, ordered a Hawaiian pizza, then sent it back because he claimed the chef skimped on the pineapple. Then at the end of the meal, he didn't leave any extra money on the table for the waitress like all of mom's other dates. When I questioned him about it, he told me a tip is like respect, it's earned not given. After that, we played some sake ball and he kicked all our asses. When I asked how he got so good, he told me he came here every night to play. He also knew a lot of the kids on a first name basis. Years later, it came out he prowled Chuck E. Cheese for kiddos to diddle. When my parents bought a house because my mom was pregnant with my younger sister, my parents slept in separate rooms. They didn't do that in our previous one-bedroom apartment. It never occurred to me that they hated each other. They would eventually separate and then divorce. I also had my paternal grandparents for 28 years before they passed away, and they slept in separate bedrooms for longer than I had them in my life. Always thought it was because they had separate schedules. Grandpa was up around 9 AM and went to bed around 10 PM while my grandma would go to bed around 3 AM and wake up at 3 PM. But apparently they had a marriage of convenience in the 1940s. They and my parents are why marriage makes me nervous. When I was little and my mom was out of the house, my dad would be the one to watch me and my brother. He would just tell us to watch TV, and would go off into his room. He would periodically come out of his room and start turning on and off random lights in the house, and he wouldn't talk to us or look at us. When I would go near his room it smelled like really bad burnt popcorn, and I remember it being the worst smell in the world. I would ask him if something's on fire but he would tell me to just go away. Well, years later in my early teens after my parents' divorce, I finally realized he would smoke crack whenever my mom left. It may not be as horrible as other stories here, but to me that is what tore my family apart and has caused me not see my father the past 7 or 8 years. I was playing in my backyard when I was 6 or 7 and the 16-year-old or so neighbor boy next door asked me to get something for him that flew over the chain link fence that separated our yards. I obliged, and when I handed it over the fence to him, there was his wiener in all its glory. I ran inside and told my mom and she called the police. When the police got there they asked what happened and I sheepishly told her that he showed me his ding-a-ling but it wasn't where it should be. It was all the way up by his belly button, which they found confusing but seemed to figure out pretty quickly. Turns out, that was the first time I had ever seen an erect penis, which as an adult, I now know makes the situation even worse to think that boy was turned on when he did that. He told the police his friends dared him to do it and he'd get a skateboard and 50 if he did. But why was he erect? Gross. When my sister and I were kids about 6 or 7 years old, my dad would have us play a game while my mother was in the hospital. He would have us look for bottles of pills, whoever found the most one. We had no idea what was going on or why my mother was always sick and in the hospital. We just knew that was the way things always were. She died when I was 9 years old. Fast forward to when I was 17. I was experiencing a really bad part of my life that I'd rather not discuss and came home crying to my dad. He eventually told me that he understood how I was feeling and told me that my mother was an addict and was making herself sick. At that moment I remembered the long lost memory of the game we played as kids and what it really was. When I was 10 I woke up in the middle of the night to my mom yelling no and I went to find out what was going on. I went into my parents' room only to be told everything is fine by her and I should go back to bed, and since it was dark and I couldn't see anything I didn't think otherwise. It turns out my father was violently raping my mom, so violently, in fact, that he broke her pelvis. What my mom didn't tell me until I had already grown up and was living on my own is that when I came into the room he tried to make his way towards me and she got her hand around his dick and iron gripped the fuck out of it to stop him coming after me. Edit: since some have asked what happened to my father, my mom almost immediately started to divorce him. It was a long time coming since he was an alcoholic and drug user, mainly cocaine. He was frequently cheating on her. Being drunk and fucked up on whatever drug cocktail of that night, an argument over whether my father should run off to his main side chick apparently broke out. He went to prison for the rape and was in and out of it for around 14 or so years for violating his parole. After my mom secured being able to legally move out of state with us, she moved us as far away from him as possible. He was still waiting in jail when he approached another person in jail and asked him to plant some drugs in my mom's car to get her in trouble. This person knew my mom, called my father an idiot, and reported this info to the police. The last time I've seen him in person for close to 20 years was the morning after the rape. A girl in my junior high school who was obviously in hindsight being physically and sexually abused. She never talked in class or at lunch. She had dreadful hygiene, never bathed or shampooed her hair. Walked hunched over all the time. She became pregnant at the end of 7th grade or beginning of 8th grade, so 13 or 14 years old. Looking back, I am sure it was sexual abuse by a close family member, but I was just a kid and didn't get it at all. I always wondered what happened to her, but she just disappeared from school one day. No teacher ever said anything, just that she was gone.